Hello and welcome to Talk Solent. We are pleased to have your company indeed, and I'd like to introduce you to my merry men today, starting with Mr. Rahi Baines. Hello.
Hi.
And he is a musician, entertainer and a past head teacher. Just got 2 new songs going, haven't you?
But that's right, they were recorded last week and they'll be out very soon.
Out on what?
On iTunes, and they'll be played on radio stations.
Wow,
Yes.
in Punjabi.
They're in Punjabi, yes.
How exciting.
Yes.
Righto. So David Banks, welcome.
Hello, Chrissy.
Hello. David is, of course, a business consultant and has many other talents to his name. We're very pleased to welcome you. Chris, welcome you, broadcaster
Hello.
and journalist. Chris has, just to make sure we all know where we are on this station, because once upon a time we were on Channel 8, and now we're on Channel 7. So presumably if you're watching, you've found Channel 7, or something happened. What do you reckon, Chris?
Well, I reckon I've penned this lyric, which is the worst lyric you'll ever hear. And I was asked to do this 30 seconds before we came on air, so I apologise for it. Talk Solent, a year old, and really it's great. Free entertainment on Freeview Channel 8. Now even better, the channel is heaven. Except that we've dropped one. We're now Channel 7.
Oh, very good.
Very good,
Excellent, excellent. Yeah.
Very good. Right, well, maybe we should put that on every day, just to remind people where we are. But
With somebody else reading it, please.
anyway, we hope very much that you have found us and that you'll stay with us, and that's lovely, because today we talk about all sorts of things. We talk about national things, we talk about local things, things that make us laugh, and I wish you'd listen to some of the limericks that just before we started.
Oh,
Naughty
look
they
at
were.
me.
Yeah,
These are our new Talk Solent mugs, by the way. We all get mugs
you'll use
now.
that
So
Solent
cheers,
mug.
cheers.
Yeah, cheers,
Cheers,
everybody.
Good
Cheers,
health,
cheers,
good health.
yeah.
Right.
Got that
Well,
Solent written on them.
On a slightly more serious
counted how many
note, we will get on to having a look at some of the things happening in our area. And one of the stories, which was a big blow for Southampton's West Quay,
Yeah.
those of you who know is a very nice shopping area indeed, they're going to lose 5 major stores, Chris.
Yeah, I couldn't believe this when I read it. I mean, they're all owned by the same group, the Arcadia Group, but apparently we're going to lose Dorothy Perkins, Wallace, Burton, Evans and Miss Selfridge. They're all going to pull their shutters down for the last time on June the 13th. Not quite sure why this is. I mean, they've come up with some stuff about they're constantly reviewing their store portfolio across the group, and leases come up for renewal, which is usually business gobbledygook for we're not making any money here, so we're going to go somewhere else. So it's all very strange. I mean, I'm just wondering whether maybe they're not doing business because they're not getting enough footfall. Does this mean that the growth of the internet is where their business lies now? It's all a bit strange, isn't it, that all 5 of them are going. That's going to be one heck of a hole in West Quay, isn't it?
I think these stores you mentioned just now, they are the more expensive ones, aren't they? And around West Quay, there are smaller shops who sell similar goods, but a bit more reasonable, and people tend to go there.
Yeah, I'm not sure that
Well, I think
overpriced goods is the reason that there's. I mean, that's up to them to get their business model right, isn't it? Then and bring down their prices.
Well, one of the huge considerations on the high street now is, of course, the business rate. I remember going back many years when I was back in the chief executive role in engineering, and certainly at that time, when the business rate suddenly increased overnight quite considerably, it was the retail high street units that were really hit hardest. And there was a garden centre near us with pretty much the same square footage, and their business rates went up by a factor of 5. And I remember thinking at the time, how does anybody afford this?
But didn't the budget do something to help all that?
Well, I think they some slight steps in the right direction have been made.
Small businessmen.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't count to West Quay, presumably.
Well, I mean, the business rates will apply there just as
They
well.
will, whatever
yeah,
the size
yeah.
of the shop in wherever it is.
Yeah, but its retail units have got this very high business rate. Certainly over industry, it's much more expensive per square metre.
I mean, reading this a bit more detail, a bit of a clue comes in one line from Arcadia spokesman. Remember that they own all these stores. And they say, our click and collect service across the brands is proving a successful way of helping our customers collect their purchases at a location most convenient to them, which does rather suggest that people are buying on the internet and having it sent down to their local store, doesn't it, to pick up there. So maybe it is a footfall problem.
So have they said when they're going?
Yes, they have actually. June the 13th.
Really, that soon?
Yeah.
British Home Stores have gone, haven't they, in Southampton as well?
Sure.
BHS. They've had some troubles as well.
Tell you what, see you there for the closing down sale, chaps.
Yes, all these. Well, that's the only thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it is worrying times.
Yeah, they are going to do what they can to keep jobs.
What do you three buy off the internet then that you wouldn't buy in a shop?
It's an interesting question.
Well, it is, because one of the things that I've tended to do is I've got a huge collection of CDs. Obviously, music is something I'm very fond of. I tend now to buy them online, but one of the reasons is that certainly around where I live, I mean, I actually come across from Dorset, and there aren't any shops really that's actually retailing a wide selection of DVDs and
that's
CDs
interesting.
anymore.
So
I
you
mean,
have to, you're saying almost have to, or go to London.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Yeah.
And with me, it's things to do with computing, softwares, and so on. I can't think of any shop in Portsmouth who sell software for different types of software.
Right.
Even there are only a couple of shops who sell audio hardware.
So you can't go into Currys or places like that and get these things?
No.
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 Oh.
I mean, I've done that. I've been to Curry's. Do you sell this? No. And even then, they order online.
Aha. Chris, what do
I
you...
can answer your question the other way around. I can tell you what I'm more likely to buy in shops than I am to buy on the internet.
Yeah.
And I would always buy clothes and shoes in the shops. I hate the idea of clothes being sent and they don't quite fit, then you have to send them back again. And I mean,
I'm going to say, on behalf of all the women watching, I'm sure we all agree with that. I mean, it's really quite risky, isn't it? I mean, sometimes for women, you're a size 12, but you might be a 14 in some, depending where you're buying from. A lot of these women's clothes now are being offered from America, so they're coming a long way, and they've got to go back a long way if they don't fit. So
I wish I
think
was a size 12, men or women.
it is quite risky.
These sizes are also different. I mean, a number 12 in America will be different from number 12 here.
Exactly, yes.
And when I go to India, I find shoe sizes. The Indian numbers are different from the UK numbers and so on.
Yes, it is interesting that. So, well, that's poor old West Quay. Let's hope nothing else goes there. And if you know anything else about West Quay, please let us know, won't you? Talk@thatsolent.com, because we want to know. We like to keep up with it all. Meanwhile, Chris, you brought me an interesting story from Havant. And you said, how are they going to save an extra £2.5 million a year in Havant?
Yes, it's interesting this actually. They say it's not privatisation, but it sort of looks like it. Yesterday they've launched something called North South East, which is a joint venture company, and basically what it is, all the wheelie bins and keeping the streets clean and maintaining the parks up to now has been done by a team of in-house employees. Well, they've now got this North South East company that they've got going. They've transferred all the employees across to North. And their motto is new name, same service. So it sounds like privatisation, doesn't it? Or outsourcing by starting another company.
It's sort of 50-50, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Instead of like they have with, like, say, the prisons, where they've gone, you know, to a group 4 or something like that, and they've gone 100% in a particular establishment. This seems to be a 50-50 one, because I read up on this, and it does seem that the idea is that the Havant Council and this company, North, you know, they're actually coming together on a sort of half and half basis.
It says this is by no means a merger or privatisation, but this is exactly what it does sound like.
I can never understand.
No.
I really can't. Having been in industry for a very long time in commerce, why is it that one group of people with a new name can suddenly do something far more efficiently
Well,
than they used to be able to do it?
I think the advantage here is that they can bid for other contracts, can't they? They can bid outside to take over other people's services and thus grow the company that way, which of course they can't do if they're all council employees.
Well, if you know,
That's what it says here.
Oh, right. Okay. I mean, that's a point I hadn't actually seen before, but I still come back to the idea that why can't the council commercial structure work efficiently? Why can't it? Why does it have to go somewhere else? And I appreciate what you're saying about being able to bid for other contracts, but you know, how essential is that when what we're really doing is providing service to the local community?
Well, this move is apparently going to save the authority £2.5 million over the next 5 years. So if all goes to plan, then it probably is worth doing. I mean, I've been involved in reporting on these various mergers before with other authorities, and setting up of independent contracts and outsourcing. And it generally, provided you've got a good contractor doing the job for you, it does work. You could end up with a local authority being nothing more than the chief executive, a bunch of contracts and a pen signing them all.
Well, we talked earlier in the week about many people working for libraries for nothing now, volunteers, because they're, you know, they're in trouble, and that's all about where you allocate money as a local authority, isn't it? But now it looks like Hampshire could see the end of its mobile libraries, which is quite worrying for people who live in the sticks or elderly people, isn't it?
Libraries is one of those things that it was wonderful when they were started, when books was the only means of getting information across. And I mean, those who love mobile libraries will defend them staunchly and say, well, you know, I'm stuck at home, I've got no other means of, you know, getting my information and so on. But the sad truth is that mobile libraries are extremely expensive things to run. Hampshire needs to cut £1.7 million from its library budget by 2020. So the mobile library locations that are going to be cut include things like Denmead, Hambledon, Whiteley, Wickham, etc., etc. And a lot of times you often find these mobile libraries go around and their stops are so close together that you think, well, you know, they've spent the whole morning serving a very tiny area. I mean, I don't know if that's true in Hampshire, but it certainly was in West Sussex when I was responsible for it.
Do you need mobile libraries still, Rahi, do you think?
I'm not too sure. You know, books, I think they are becoming dinosaurs. Now, although some people will disagree with me. I mean, if you go to the beach, you know, it's nice to sit there in the sun and read a book. But there are other means of reading as well.
Okay, we'll come back and just ask you, David. We've got to take a break. So we'll come back from the break and we'll find out what David thinks about that. We'll see you in a minute. Hello, welcome back to Talk Solent. We were just talking about how mobile libraries in Hampshire may go, and we seem to be a tiny bit divided on that, although, David, you haven't yet spoken on the matter.
Well, my mother is a very sprightly, we were using that word earlier, lady of just approaching 92, and she's a great outward-going, walking person, and she likes to read, but she's very upset by being told you've got to go on to www. blah blah blah, and she wants the book. And where she lives in a lovely establishment near the river at Christchurch, there's 56 little flats there for elderly people, of which half of them are computer users and half aren't.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and only yesterday, because we had our sort of day out yesterday, she was saying it would be so useful if the mobile library could come and park up in their car park, because she never drove and we lost my father not so very long ago, and so that was the end of her being mobile apart from the bus. So if there were sort of libraries that could come along and park up in their car park for an hour a week, it would be very useful to them. So I think the community idea, and I appreciate that it's very difficult to have vehicular mobile libraries running by volunteers perhaps because of the legalities of using vehicles and so on, particularly large vehicles, but I still think there's a role for them, yeah.
So you, just picking up from what you were saying, Rahi, are you a bit of a Kindle user then?
I mean, that is one way of reading a book, but then on the other hand, if these mobile libraries were, you know, they were got rid of, then they will never be replaced.
No.
So all those people who use them, they will lose out. You know, I think it'll be a shame to lose them. Perhaps another way could be thought about, by which the service could stay and still be able to affordable.
Because I mean, bookshops have hit the ground running with Kindles and that by actually selling what you can read on your Kindle, as well as books, haven't they? The bigger ones, Waterstones and Co.
Yeah, it's just a shame that libraries can't really gear themselves up to electronic books quite as much as they should do.
Yes,
I mean,
why
they're
not?
very good with CDs, they're very good with audio stuff and, you know, and videos and so on. They're really good at this. Why can't they do the same for the actual core business of theirs, which is reading? I mean, technology changes, and you have to go along with that. I mean, you don't see a television rental shop anywhere in the UK now, do you? Because they're not big boxes that are unreliable full of valves. They're all flat screen things you put on the wall. So there's a business that's gone. You know, you just have to accept that some businesses come and go, but usually they're replaced by something else, aren't they? Some new business is created.
But you know, I was having a sort of lunch the other day with some old colleagues, and we were talking back not that long ago, and this is a very generalised sort of aspect on all this now, very generalised take, but you know, going back perhaps some 15, 20 years ago in business, everybody each year tried to get an increase in price from their customers, and you seem to be required to give your suppliers an increase, and we all did, and we all each year had an increment in the income for the business that you could then use for investment and this, that and the other. Now, it was very noticeable to me. I've been out of industry now for just over a year, and it's very noticeable in the last 5 years that most of the people who were now in the negotiating seats, offices of large companies, were extremely young, extremely, dare I say, inexperienced, although highly educated people who now only wanted to cut costs and were expecting you to go in there, and to retain their business you had to cut your costs. Now, what's happened across the whole world, certainly Europe, is nobody can get ahead anymore. Nobody can ever get that little annual increment where they invested, people had a decent pay rise, they invested in training in their staff. Everybody now, all the motor manufacturers, we quoted from one of the very, very famous motor manufacturers that you could only submit your quote when you ticked a box that said you agreed to a 3% loyalty cut in your prices every single year. Now, yeah,
Reducing it by 3% every year.
yeah, yeah, and then of course you've got supermarkets who actually charge a fee to actually put well-known products on shelves, and they expect a payback at the end of the year, and these sorts of things. Now, what this has done, and this is why the libraries are being cut, and this is being cut, and that's being cut, is the fact that the way ahead that used to exist doesn't anymore. Everybody literally is depressed in their costs and their finances, and when you've got your own business being cut perhaps by 3% per year just to retain business, just to retain a client's business, and then on top of that, I hate to say it, but there is a living wage issue that comes in, and also on top of that, auto-enrolment pensions, which are all extra costs that the government's put on employers.
Sounds hopeless case.
There's a lot of depression in business, and when you hear about the libraries problem that the councils have got, you know, you can actually bring that in, and because I can speak at length on this because I was there for such a long time.
Sure.
And the problems are you can't get ahead.
No. It all sounds pretty grim, doesn't it?
Yeah, it all does. I think perhaps the problem is that libraries do not produce anything.
Yes, they don't.
They don't generate income.
Well, they do, but only a very small amount.
Yeah.
Yes,
Public service, though, isn't it?
and that's right. So public service, it will cost you. So
Well-
how far can you keep cutting the cost?
Moving on, I mean, David no doubt will have something to say about Middle Eastern money being attracted to Portsmouth. So we shall be seeing a lot more Arab gentlemen, perhaps, if the MP for Portsmouth South has her way.
Flick Drummond has been out in the United Arab Emirates in a bid, it says, to win over wealthy investors to transform Portsmouth's economy. It all sounds very optimistic, this. What she wants to do is to get the multimillionaires to spend their cash creating the city's first 5-star hotel, and she wants millions invested in the Northern Quarter shopping complex off Market Way. That's a plan that's been kicking around for 10 years, but there's been no money to do it. She also wants more money to make University of Portsmouth more elite than it already is, etc., etc., etc. And yet she says she wasn't on a trade trip, which is quite interesting. But of course there is a precedent for this, isn't there? We do have the Spinnaker Tower now, which is United Arab Emirates money. You know, so obviously they are interested in this area, which is very good. But quite whether she's going to achieve all this, I don't know.
And what about Portsmouth Football Club? I mean, they're about to go up anyway.
Yeah.
Aren't they Pompey supporters, we hope?
Indeed.
I think if we can get Middle Eastern money into Portsmouth, yeah, go for it. It'll create more jobs and it'll create better facilities here.
Well, it sounds good, but what's the downside? No doubt you'll tell us.
No, I mean, anything that brings in sensible, good investment is excellent. As you say, it creates jobs, creates facilities, attracts people to come to the area. But listening to something else coming in about the London mayoral campaign, one of the questions that was raised, I heard, and I've seen it myself, is at night there are large blocks of flats, there's no lights on. Because people have bought these flats, they're brand new, nobody's in them, and they are just foreign money that's put into these flats as an investment, and nobody's living there. And having had a recent trip down the Thames myself, listening to a lovely Cockney gentleman who was the skipper of this tourist boat going up and down, he was saying, you know, that there used to be loads and loads of accommodation along the sides of the Thames, and there still is, but it's just now that it's £1 million upwards. And I wonder whether that might then start happening around here.
Down here?
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought.
Well, I don't
Would they
own
really
one of those
invest?
flats.
Would,
I can do that.
would they see Portsmouth, Southampton and so on as attractive as London to invest in property?
Well, I think London's probably getting to a point now where they realise that something's got to be done about it. So they will now start looking around elsewhere from London, and the South Coast, I would think, is probably a good place to do it.
That's interesting, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you can be sure that whoever from the United Arab Emirates invests in Portsmouth won't be doing it out of an altruistic sense of wanting to help Portsmouth. It'll be because there's a solid business return in
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, which will probably reduce by 3% every year. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just glad you're out of this now. aren't you?
I am, yes.
That's interesting that, and you know, that's an MP working for her money,
Yeah.
isn't it, Flick Drummond, who has sat in this very seat. And, you know, is that what MPs should be doing, actually? Should they be looking to the future and bringing in foreign money?
Well, yes, I mean, if they're interested in Portsmouth, and she's after all one of the MPs for Portsmouth,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
who's better qualified to tell them what they would be investing in and what the place is like?
Wait, isn't that their job?
Yeah.
Well, I
Isn't
don't
it-
know,
you
because
know-
they spend a long time in their surgeries listening to people having a moan about the drains or the neighbours or this and that or the rates or the council tax or whatever.
So bring the money in.
Yeah.
Bring foreign investors in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting that we're having this conversation about money coming in from possibly the Arab states or indeed anywhere else in the world, at a time when, if I'm allowed to mention, the forthcoming referendum on the EU membership, in or
Well,
out.
we can only discuss it if you all disagree, because we've been told to be balanced. So anybody for out? Are you for out? No?
No.
Everybody for in?
Strongly for in.
No, I'm for out with a reservation.
Okay, well, that's all right. We can have this
Yeah.
conversation then.
Well, I just think you hear people saying, you know, if only we were out, we could get relationships with other parts of the world. Why can't we do that while we're in and have relationships inside and outside the EU? As indeed we're talking about now, with Arab money coming in to buy flats and
Sorry,
Chinese money. And...
Just for a second, I thought you were an out. You're an in.
Oh, we're definitely an in. Oh, must
We aren't
stay in.
allowed to ask Chris because he presents the programme, so we can't. We have to
You've got the casting vote.
declare an interest.
Oh, I know nothing. I know nothing.
Interesting. Anyway, yes, so well done, Flick Drummond. And what about the rest of you MPs in Southampton and the island and, of course, Portsmouth, Chichester? Are you going to bring money into your area by attracting people from far away? Forget Europe, perhaps. Go further afield. Interesting times. OK, well, when we come back off the break, we're going to talk about money and mental health, because those of you who watch ITV's programme with Martin Lewis, the money saving programme, which is very good, he is setting up a new money and mental health policy institute, pledging millions of pounds over 4 years to try and help people who get into enormous trouble with debt, and that leads to their mental health going down. But equally, conversely, it can be their mental health that leads them to get into debt. So we'll talk to our panel about that in a minute. I'll be back with you very shortly. Hello, welcome back to Talk Solent, a class entertainment if I say it myself. And of course I'm lucky enough to have Chris Ryder with me, David Banks and Rahi Baines, who in their way all have talents to offer you this very day. We've been talking about money coming into the area. What was that, Mr. Ryder?
Nothing. I was just saying cheers.
Yes,
That Solent mug.
we keep on with our That Solent
we like
mug.
that, yeah.
And you too could be lucky enough to win a That Solent mug if you persevere.
This might end up on my kitchen sink. You never know. Oh, sorry, no, we can't take them home. Yeah.
Right, Martin Lewis, those of you who watch, I watch it, I think he comes up with some very useful stuff on his money saving programme on ITV. And also he has a column, and of course many of us subscribe to his online particular offering. Now he's saying, come on, we've got to do something about this, money and mental health. And so he's put his money where his mouth is and set up a policy institute funded with 2.1 million, because he says debt and mental illness are a marriage made in hell, and helping people when they're in control to protect themselves when they're out of control is what we're trying to do. And it is interesting, isn't it, that when you're mentally ill, he's saying you're more likely to spend money.
Yeah.
But when you've spent, the other side is, if you're a spender of money on stuff, it's likely to affect your mental health.
Yes, that makes absolute sense.
So do you think this is money well spent?
No. Oh, yes. I'm sure.
For him
I'm
to
sure
set
the
this up,
study.
yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, you can imagine. I'm sure we've all been there. We've all had something terrible happen in our lives, and we've all thought, you know, I don't know. It might be just go out to dinner tonight, or go and have a drink, or go and buy a new car, or whatever it might be.
A bit of retail therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But then, of course, having had the high from that, and you come down the other side, you now contributed to whatever the problem may have been before.
And people, of course, who do have bipolar are particularly prone to going into great highs of spending money and then regretting it bitterly when they come down.
That's right. That puts them into depression even more.
Yes.
Yes. It's a vicious circle, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I suppose, you know, it's interesting. He's actually publishing a 44-page book on this, which you can get online. So if you Google Martin Lewis, moneysavingexpert.com, you can find out how to get it at home. But, I mean, he says, you know, if you're in trouble with money, speak to a non-profit debt help agency, and even consider telling your bank if you're ill. But, you know, I wonder if you're that ill, mentally
Do not
ill.
go to a loan company.
Yeah,
To get yourself out of it, because you'll get in deeper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where are we with these loan companies that advertise on telly? Well, the one particular was particularly held over the coals, wasn't it?
They're still there, aren't they? They're still
they
advertising
are.
huge rates of interest,
Yeah,
aren't they? And they're small print in the corner of the screen. You look at it, you think, what? How much?
But even with a credit card, which, I mean, pretty much everybody's got, I mean, I'm not quite sure what the figures are now, but the APRs, is it 16, 18%? You know, which I know is a lot less than the sort of the loan sharky types, but even so, it's very easy to go mad with the plastic and run up, and then you've got these high repayments.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just, it's vulnerability is the key.
Yeah.
You can do other things besides spending money. If you're in a vulnerable place, you're more likely to spend the money and then regret it, because you're not making sound judgment.
I've read recently that what is owed on credit cards is truly alarming, and yet we don't hear about this from our politicians. So we're all spend, having a wonderful time with plastic. So who's going to call halt?
Well, the problem is, of course, from the government's point of view, is that if you do call a halt on it, all that spending that's going on is actually giving people jobs and an income, which they then pay tax on and keep other people in their jobs. So it's a spiral, isn't it? And if you do stop it, then
You know,
the government's got a problem.
David, recently I read somewhere that Eastern countries like India and China, the general trend in the public is to save money. In the West, especially in the States, the general trend is to spend money and not to save. So the country, America, is in heavy debt. And to keep the money circulation going, they borrow money from India and from China to keep it going, because people of their own countries do not save enough money. So credit card companies are making a lot of money because people buy stuff on credit card, so their factories keep working. And for the factories, money is borrowed from India, and because there's a lot of saved money. So that way, what the person was trying to say was that America should start saving money.
Yeah, I presume India is not like that. India is not a credit-based nation.
It's not. It's not. My own teaching from my parents says, buy something if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, you haven't got the money, then wait till you have and then buy
But
the
that's
goods.
not the way today in the West, is it, in Britain?
Buy it first, don't
Have
you?
it
and then
now.
pay it,
When did
yeah.
that start? I have a feeling it started around the 90s or...
Well, it was big purchases like motor cars when they started coming in, that you could have a car on easy terms. That was the old thing, wasn't it? And I know that they had easy terms on radios. I got some old magazines. You could buy radio sets just immediately before the war, and it was, you know, like 7 and 6pence down and half a crown a week, you know. And
Still paying mine off.
Did you know, this is interesting, Martin Lewis, I didn't know this. He says you can add a note to your credit file. You can volunteer to add information on mental health problems in what's called a notice of correction. This alerts potential lenders so they don't lend further credit. You can remove it when you want. Did you know that?
Oh, no.
I didn't know that.
I think credit cards can get into trouble all by themselves without help from their owners, don't you, frankly?
And he says the other thing to remember is if you have bought something on when you're on a high or whatever online, you've got 14 days after delivery to change your mind.
Yes,
Do people realise that?
That's basic consumer law, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
because that's quite important as well. So he's actually coming up with all sorts of useful things to say, hey, it's not as out of hand as you think
No,
it is.
and for a lot of people, if they don't buy something on credit, they will never get it. It's the only way they actually have of buying it, because they will never be able to save for it beforehand. Because by the time you do, it's then gone up, it's out of your reach.
Yeah, that's interesting, Chrissy, what you said just now about 14 days, you can return the goods and so on. I bought a computer recently, and 2 days later, I took it back and I said, I don't want it. Take the computer back, give my money. And they said, no, you have opened it, you have used it, and it's working 100%. Because it's working, we can't take it back. 2 days later.
Yeah.
I'd just like
yes,
someone to put me straight on this, because he's saying changing your mind online. If you impulse buy online, you've got a right to cancel the goods within 14 days. What I don't know is whether the law's different if you buy from a shop. Anybody know?
Distance selling regulations, aren't they, for when you buy online? I would have thought you could take pretty much anything back to a shop, unless you put it into such a state that it can't be resold, which maybe that's what they were trying to argue.
No,
with your computer.
he tested it. He said, oh, there's nothing wrong with the computer.
Well, you weren't taking it back because it was faulty, were you? You just didn't want it, presumably.
Yeah, I didn't want it. I said, you take it back, I don't want it.
He has to take it back, as far as I know,
I would,
within a reasonable period of time.
Contact trading standards on that one, I think, for sure, because I'm sure they'll have a different version of that.
But he finally says on this, prioritise heating and eating. Yeah. Don't simply pay those who hassle you the hardest. Look for a good debt counsellor.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
But then you've got to come clean and say, hey, this is the problem I'm in. And for a lot of people, their pride just won't let them, will they? Or the fear of what will happen to them. Bankruptcy is not such a fear as it used to be, though. There's other ways, aren't there?
Oh, yeah, it's a voluntary arrangements and very sensible way forward.
Well, some companies deliberately go bankrupt and then start up next door with a slightly different name.
So,
Anyway, we do live in a different world than 50, 40, 30 years ago. We now can go somewhere for our holidays extremely cheaply, and Southampton Airport helps us to do that, doesn't it? Because it has Flybe going in and out. And now I'm interested to see there's a petition which has been got up to the people running Flybe saying, hey, you don't fly everywhere, we want you to fly. So we want you to think about this, because we'd like to go to Hungary, to Budapest. And 960 people have signed this today. Isn't that amazing?
Well, I'm delighted that they're so interested in where Flybe goes. But I mean, surely they can find other companies that will fly to where they want to go. I mean, if they're not flying to these destinations, it's probably because it's not economic for them to do so.
Yeah.
Ah.
It's not like a local bus service where you say, oh, do you mind going down our street? There's a whole load of people down here would like to use the bus. Well, maybe they can do that, you know, but flying to a different country. But hey, there's no harm in asking, is there?
So if you could tell your local airport where you want to fly, you could tell any of your local traders what you want. Can you? Does anybody bother?
Well, the whole point about being in business is to provide what your customers want and therefore generate sale. So people ought to listen, and if that's Flybe in Southampton Airport, it's a good idea.
But we've gone round in a circle to where we started with West Quay. So are we suggesting that those shops that are closing are not giving? I'm only questioning, not saying it. Is it likely they're not wholly giving what people want?
I suppose it's a possibility.
Right.
But we'd have to know precisely chapter and verse the reasons why they are pulling out. I mean, the
Yes,
inference
we would.
in the piece
And
was that it was lack of footfall.
can I say I'm not casting aspersions on any of those shops or West Quay. In fact, I'd like to hear from you. Please put us right on this. We'd like to know. A talk at thatsolent.com why those particular shops are going to close. And indeed, we'd like to hear from Southampton Airport. Are you going to listen to this petition? And are you going to go to Budapest, Hungary, wherever?
I don't know. Did I hear you mention earlier on, Chris, that all these companies, the shops that are closing, are owned by one parent company?
Yes, the Arcadia Group.
Yes. So it's something to do with the mother company, I think.
Yeah, but interesting. That's a point. But also, they are different shops selling different things, so each will have its own dynamic. It's the fact that all five are going at the same time does suggest that, as you say, that it's a parent company issue, perhaps, rather than the individual trading merits or demerits of those particular stores.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, well, we like to talk about the Isle of Wight on this show, and apparently the 24th of September, Chris, is going to be declared Isle of Wight Day. And earlier this week we mentioned that the editor had Fight for the White tattooed on his arm.
What?
Because they're fed up on the Isle of Wight of not having the facilities, the money given to them by government and so on, that they should have to run things well. So he's actually had it tattooed on his arm. Well done, Alan Marriott. But 24th of September, Isle of Wight Day.
Apparently so. The island has, has a new High Sheriff, one Robin Courage, MBE.
Okay. Save the thought, come back in a minute, and Chris will explain it all. Just got to take a break, folks. Back in a second. Right, welcome back. We were just talking about Isle of Wight Day, which is going to be on September the 24th this year. Rahi was expressing his feelings towards the Isle of Wight. But why are they having their own day?
Well, in fact, I'm sure Rahi will be one of the main guests on the Isle of Wight for that day, because he can't wait to go there, can you, Rahi?
No, I'm retired now.
What he was saying,
I would love to go and live there.
Yes, anyway, before we get him into too much trouble, the new Island High Sheriff, one Robin Courage, MBE, has announced that he is, from henceforth, September the 24th, oh yay, will be Isle of Wight Day, the first ever one. Not quite sure what people are going to do on Isle of Wight Day.
I don't know, there'll be Morris dancers.
Without a doubt. He's hoping the island will celebrate together like Red Nose Day or Children in Need. I hope that islanders, island communities and island companies will come up with hundreds of different projects to celebrate this day.
And to raise money for all the money they're not getting from central government.
I suspect that the Isle of Wight authorities will carefully not want to put any contribution into this.
They're not happy, you know.
No, they'll want people to pay for it themselves.
I mean, I was going to ask a question which might sound a bit silly, but what is the actual purpose of an Isle of Wight Day? I mean, it sounds great, and obviously awareness
to
is so on.
celebrate all things
Isle
Isle
of
of
Wight. What is the purpose of this day? That's
is it to generate money? Is it to...
I'm going to blow the whistle on Sussex Day now. Sussex Day was started some years ago, and I was involved in the organisation of that, and it was nothing more than just to promote Sussex. But, nothing much ever happened with Isle of Wight. With Sussex Day, I have to say.
I think with the Isle of Wight, it's a brilliant idea how many people actually know all the things that go on the island. It'll be good to promote, but it'll work only if the crossing was made a lot cheaper.
Well,
at the moment, it's a 4 miles stretch of water, and it's the most expensive 4 miles in anybody's
took the words out of my mouth. One of the readers' comments below this story I saw in the paper was, Well, I suppose we can expect free trips to the Isle of Wight on that day to celebrate it, can we not? In order to get people there for it, which I thought was quite a good point.
So you're a businessman. Why is it so expensive to get to the Isle of Wight? Now, we have had the Wight Link on here, and they've explained it's extremely expensive to run their ships and so on and so on. I understand all that, overheads and stuff, but why?
I'm only going to, sort of try and put some estimates of what the ideas might be, my thought process. I don't really know, but certainly I like going over on the island. I go quite frequently, but the cost of running those vessels, the cost of running the service when there aren't that many people queuing to get on, and you've still got to go because you've got a scheduled service. That the overheads of running those ferries is absolutely colossal.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that justifies it for the rest of us, though, does it? It puts us off going.
Well,
doesn't it?
Well, yes, but it is a reality, though, that if you've got a situation where, the other day I went to the Sandbanks ferry, they took me only across because there was nobody else waiting to go. This is Sandbanks, but it's the same story. There was nobody else wanting to go in either direction. I just went at an odd time. But they had to run that. There's no way that my sort of £3.50 for my little car going across was going to pay the fuel of that crossing. But they had to run the service. They had to keep to the schedule.
Did you ring them up and ask when they were going, and they said, what time can you get here?
Sort of, yeah.
Oh, the old ones are the best ones, yeah. Okay. Well, now on to a slightly different but more serious subject. There's two stories slightly linked to children today in our area. This might interest you because you were a former head teacher, weren't you?
Right, yes. Yeah.
And they're now suggesting that children could be dropped off at nursery schools as early as 6 a.m. so their parents can go work where they ever have to work, and that it won't hurt the children because, well, it'll be fine. They'll just do what they do at 6 instead of 9.
And you have to get the children up at 5 o'clock. Will the children be awake at 6 o'clock, let alone the parents?
They'll be taking
but
them
then how? What happens once you drop the children at the school? Who looks after them?
Well, this is the other thing, isn't it?
It's the teachers, isn't it?
Is the school day going to end that much sooner? Is it going to be 1:30 instead of
I
3:30?
doubt. Then you have to. I suppose you'll have to keep the children in till the parents come back from work to collect them.
And a lot of them will come back at the very last minute because here's a bit of free childcare.
Yes.
Yeah.
So not good for the children.
No, not good for the
staff
or schools.
Or schools.
No.
Right. Well, they're threatening it. The story slightly linked to that in our area is quite an alarming one about police guarding nurseries.
Yes,
in our
apparently
area.
one particular nursery has been attacked by vandals, and they've been doing awful, unspeakable things on cots used by the babies, turning up the boiler room heat full blast, breaking in, smashing things. One nursery has been attacked no fewer than 7 times this year. And we're only into May of April of 2016. But there's a whole lot of this going on, so much so that the police are now really seriously investigating this, and they are putting guards on some of these nurseries. So heaven knows what is going on there.
Is this just, I haven't actually heard this story, so is this just one area, or is it a whole number of nurseries over a wide area?
Well, it does say across Southampton in this story, and I have to say all I have to go on is this story, but how far across Southampton is. But it's a very nasty attack. It's not just stealing stuff, it's actually doing severe and
I think
unspeakable
Sounds
damage.
like a sort of grudge.
I think an angry group of people.
Yes.
I think that's
Who
what
would
it's all
target
about.
nurseries, for
Yeah.
heaven's sake.
Who knows?
Who knows? They must have had a grudge, or
There must be something like this. But anyway, the police are treating us, fortunately, very seriously. I'm very glad to hear that.
But
Yeah,
such incidents, my experience tells me, that they only happen because of a handful of people. Once those people are removed or they are identified, then such things stop happening.
Yeah.
I remember years ago in my street, the council planted trees by the roadside, and then a group of people came and they broke all those trees. The council planted them again. They broke them again, just in half. And then those group of people, they were identified. And the third time council planted them, the trees are still there.
Well, thank heavens for CCTV, say I.
Yeah.
Yes, I've just been told this isn't at all nurseries.
No,
so
it
please
is
don't
not.
get
No, not all
alarmed.
nurseries, no,
There
it's
was
a-
talk about just a certain group of nurseries.
Yes.
So please don't get agitated about that. Now, we can't really get through today without talking about health. Because if you're watching on Wednesday or Thursday, the junior doctors will presumably be out because it's a 48-hour one, isn't it? And they're saying that 5,000 operations have had to be cancelled. And they're saying this is the way things will always look, the junior doctors are saying, if they don't get their way.
Apparently that 5,000, I mean, I'm not minimising the effect at all, but apparently statistically this is only 3% of the total number of surgical operations carried out in the UK on any given time, on the same time period. So it's, although it's a big number, it's not, you know, there's still 97% of operations going ahead. And it's the next one that will be worrying, the next strike, if that happens, because that is when they will withdraw emergency cover, and that's never happened in the UK before.
No. So who would be there? You'd get
Consultants, I suppose.
consultants,
Yeah.
GPs.
whoever, yeah.
Well, which leads me to say, very good afternoon to Botley, anybody who's in that area, because there's a certain surgery in that area where there's an 8-week waiting time to see your GP. Because there aren't enough GPs in the circuit, are there?
But that won't be for emergency appointments, I'm sure.
No, I don't think it ever is. I think in emergencies will get seen, but routine. You know, what are you going to do then, panel, to get more GPs in?
Well, firstly, I think that is the right point, is that we do need more GPs and we do need more ordinary doctors. I mean, the term junior doctor, to me, always seems inaccurate because it seems to span doctors with, you know, in some instances, quite a lot of service.
It's anybody up to but just below consultant level.
Yeah.
It's technically
Yes.
a junior doctor. It's a very bad misnomer. That one.
And we just need lots and lots more of them, it seems to me. They're working very long hours. I have a lot of sympathy with them, but I don't think they should strike. But we just seem to be understaffed.
So many will have to come from overseas because apparently not enough were trained up in our British schools, medical schools. So that's the way it has to be.
Yeah.
And of course we are hemorrhaging quite a lot of doctors as well, who are leaving to go and work in countries where working conditions and salaries are more attractive than here.
Yes. So it's quite a worrying time, isn't it?
It is.
Particularly, they say we're all living longer, but then they publish statistics today like 1 in 11 of us is diabetic. That seems immensely high, doesn't it?
I'm sure it hasn't just come up, these figures haven't just come up out of the blue. People have been diabetic in the past, but not know about it. And now more people are being aware of this disease, and then the figures are going up because of that, I think.
And more people are clinically obese than are underweight now. That's never happened before. So I suppose if you've got that level of a rise in obesity, then diabetes isn't far behind, is it?
So we should have a minister of eating the right things, do you think, appointed?
I like the term, Minister of Eating the Right Things. Yes. He'll be next to the Ministry of Silly Walks.
Yeah.
really.
Yes, that's right.
So if we are getting fatter and fatter, it's the minister's fault. Yeah,
Gotta blame somebody.
No, the nanny state. This is it. Well, as soon as they say you all eat too much, drink too much, or cut down, they say the other people say, "Oh, it's the nanny state at work again," don't they?
Illegal, immoral, or fattening. All the things I like.
But the fact is that more stuff we buy, pre-processed food, has more fat and more sugar in, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, life has just changed so dramatically, hasn't it? I'm 63 and my parents were the typical old-fashioned couple. My mother stayed at home. She spent most of the morning sort of cleaning the home and then making us all a lunch. And then there was a cooked meal on the table when we got in. And now it's not like that because mums are out to work, understandably, and dads are out to work, and they're all bringing in and contributing to the household. So now it's much faster food, which is probably less healthy. It seems to be a very
Probably
transparent
more
problem.
regulated quantities. I remember before I was married, I spent 12 years living by myself, eating my 400-gram pre-cooked M&S or whatever it was dinner every night. And once you finish that, there's no seconds. Now it's, oh, there's a bit left. Would you like some? Perhaps I will. You know, I mean, you only got to do that a few times, and you feel the consequences.
You were well disciplined because I always had the McVitie's digestive down the side there.
Now it can be told. Now it can be
Biscuitaholic, yes.
I think cook the meals from scratch at home. They are the safest, the best, and
It's the
healthiest,
time,
I
isn't it?
think.
What time will we be
It's the
round?
time.
No, it's so easy. Indian meals are so easy to cook. You know, chapati and a dal or a curry, and that's all you need.
Oh, you're making me feel
Excellent.
hungry.
We shall be round at Rahi's house tonight. Just before we go, if you have a dog, he's supposed to have a chip today.
From today.
By law, and there's just your cat should also have a microchip.
Yes,
but
indeed.
anyway, the law, we've got to go, but that's basically it, isn't it?
Yep.
You've got
From
to have
today,
a chip if
yep.
you've got a dog. So there we are. We've done our good turn, put everybody right. We'll see you again on Friday. I'll be back Friday.
And we're all
Thank
round
you,
to
panel.
Rahi's for a
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much.